on the immigration side, the first thing when someone comes to BC, well, to Canada, they'll do is they'll get a phone, right? And we've recognized that's the first place they look for services. And so providing those frontline services for immigrants right away through, apps, programs, different things available on their phones is key, actually, for that integration process. And then just another comment just around the seniors devices. Just a personal story. My dad was so excited when the iPad came out. He's like, great, bigger buttons. This is for me. He thought that's what it was for. Just a bigger iPod so he could see the buttons.
Yeah.
Wow. So they got them. Yeah.
And you bought one, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. My mom has one, and they Twitter, and they, but yeah.
It's because they're cool.
They're cool. Yeah.
Yesterday I was in Edmonton and I met two ministers. One is the Minister of Culture, Community, Spirit. Another one was the Minister of Employment, Immigration and Employment. The guy from Community Culture, he's my generation, who said, I don't even own a Facebook. I am not going to be on Facebook. I refuse. And the other guy, much younger, he said, Facebook is the way to go. You don't join social media, you are dead. So there is still that perception of, even in the decision-making strata, we're seeing different perceptions.
But the truth is that you have to bend backwards, otherwise you're going to be like a fossil or some kind of a dinosaur left behind, in the next 10 years, basically, news will be delivered in a very dramatic, totally different ways. It already is, so like I said, if you're much older now, someone like me, I'm kind of struggling to bend backwards, because a lot of things my students could do, I can't, and it's like, okay, I even see myself as almost like some kind of a dinosaur, but just desperately trying to kind of like, get back to the game, as it were, and kind of be relevant, at least talk to them in the language and the technology, they can understand. So I don't think you can escape that, Same thing with professionals, journalists, and the rest of them. Look at things like graphic arts. Literally nothing else now is done, manually. Everything is almost like kind of computerized. You get a pretty good Apple computer and the rest of them, simulate everything in there. Even in sciences, in the labs, people used to kind of grow, that they, what do they call it again, for experiments. Now they use computer simulation for virtually everything. I was kind of talking to somebody yesterday. I said, just imagine you were a neurosurgeon who graduated about 25 years ago. What neurosurgery was in 25 years ago when you were in school or even had surgery, and what it is now, that kind of stuff. You have to keep training and retraining and the rest of them to be able to catch up with the new technologies and the procedures they're using right now. Because, within a space of 3-4 years in medicine, things so dramatically change in terms of the procedures they use. And that applies to virtually every profession.
That's right. So then there is an argument to be made with intergenerational knowledge transfer, what I was talking before, that I see the young generation, even in the media, reaching out to bring the older generation along. So it's like almost a reversal mentorship.
The older generation needs to realize that they should take that opportunity and do that. Do you know what I mean?
Well, if they demand.
And some of them do. That's why you were talking about those in your office now. You are kind of teaching how to tweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of them who want to stay longer, not even to stay longer, but to remain relevant, even if they retire.
Yeah.
They are realizing that, and they kind of discover that, okay, we thought we were ahead of this. Now we just discovered that we have to get back, that kind of stuff to be relevant.
Yeah.
So, and that's where the mentoring, in terms of the younger ones who are much more techno-savvy, comes in. Of course, the knowledge transfer goes either way.
Yeah.
It was Shakespeare who said that the child is the father of the man, When a parent gets old, that little boy or little girl, who was a baby will be the one taking care of him and stuff like that. So it kind of goes either way. Sometimes it's people who have the more experience who are going to, maybe by age-wise and years put in work, will have to mentor the younger ones. But when it comes to the technology, that kind of stuff, if you're the younger person, then you are the person, for instance, helping the older ones. So that way, it's almost like a dialectical process. They kind of mutually help each other, both in terms of the skills of news writing and the experiences, I mean, like if somebody comes in now, no matter how techno-savvy he or she is, you've had years of experience, reporting. He's going to learn from you in terms of like, the nitty-gritty of the job. But if he comes in and he's so techno-savvy, then you probably say, okay, it's like, I need to kind of learn, update my tweets, my tweeting techniques and the rest. You learn from him in terms of the technology. So you have something to offer each other. So it's no longer a question of, the older guy is going to teach the younger person or the younger person. I mean, you have to have the humility, to understand that, you're not omniscient, you don't know everything.
Yeah.
And that you're willing to learn.
I think you're seeing that across the board, and just from my reporting in business, I mean, corporations have fully understand the importance of connecting their older workers with their younger workers. The younger workers are coming in just with the incredible skills. They may not know the job to the extent that an older peer might, but they have skills and knowledge that their workforce just simply doesn't have. So I think a lot of businesses are really engaging in that, and I don't think media is any different, or we wouldn't be any different if we were hiring. But but one thing I think is good news is that when you look at the journalism schools, they're still packed with young people. So engaging young people in journalism, I don't see as a huge issue in Canada.
And is it as diverse?
I don't know the statistics.
It's improving, like UBC has made some improvements, but generally speaking, the whole industry is generally feminizing. But I don't want to,
Well, I just wanted to say that when you see the one thing that media has always had going for it, and it's a myth, but maybe this is something you don't want to put on YouTube, but media seems really sexy. So young people are like, well, I want to be the investigative reporter. They have this kind of gumshoe image. There's a kind of a really sort of, anti-authority, sexy kind of appeal of the media. The reality is, of course, different than that, but it's not without that element. And so as long as I think, if the media could do itself one favor, if it wanted to engage in youth, it's to produce a drama, perhaps, that featuring journalists in today's world, with the tweeting, and when I go out on a story, I carry a video camera. I'm tweeting, I'm writing my story almost automatically and sending it to the web. I mean, for anybody who's like a techno geek, like journalism is the way to go right now. It's writing. It's 50% technology and 50%. Intellect these days.
So that maybe brings us to the last question, which is how can we get ethno-cultural youth to be better engaged in media? Then that's a really, really important tool then, is to become tech savvy. And if you're worried about your future in media and you're like, oh, the media outlets are not hiring right now, you don't need an excuse to learn these skills. Anybody can go on YouTube and look at a tutorial and learn how to do Twitter and Facebook and other social media. And same with the camera and the editing software. I taught myself how to shoot. BCIT did a good job, but I had the skills before I came there. And BCIT just honed those skills. So I think that if you're passionate about this area and you're passionate about doing media, you don't need a job or a school to tell you to do media. You can do it on your own, and now that there are all these social media outlets to show your work, like YouTube, I mean, it's perfect practice so that when the baby boomers do retire, you're set with the skills and you're ready. So I think that's the big.
I think I made this point earlier, which is about the democratization, as some people call it, of media production. Okay, just think back several years ago. For you to be a photographer, you require a lot of skills. Okay, because I call a photographer a painter with a lens. The same way a poet is a painter with words, and you have the artist and the rest of them who kind of draw. These are all artists. They are all paints, but they use different resources and tools to paint. Okay, now what has happened? So you get all those cameras, you see all these big lenses and the rest of them. You have to adjust it, to the weather, to the time, to the image, to the lighting, and everything. It requires a lot of professional technical skills. But what has happened now is that you have these new technologies, where often you don't have to have those skills. You have the camera and the rest of them, it's like it adjusts itself automatically to the light. Okay, but that's the truth, So anybody can get a relatively good picture now.
Yeah.
without having those enormous technical skills. So part of what the new media has done is the process of democratizing communication, where the role of the experts, the role of the trained professionals are increasingly diminishing, and that's what they call the media theory, citizen media. Okay, the ability of young people to do media, that kind of stuff. So that wall between the producer and the receiver is actually tumbling. Now what you have is virtually everybody, that kind of can do media and also receive media. Yes, there was a lot of skepticism on the part of the mainstream media when it started, but increasingly the mainstream media now go to the blogs
Yeah.
to find out what is happening.
In
It
Libya,
doesn't-
all the footage is from a phone.
So if there's anything that is
Yeah.
breaking, all they need to do is to confirm, If they cannot even sure about that, they'll say, this has not been independently confirmed. Like when they were getting footages from Iran, I think last year, it was like, okay, we got this from Iran and the rest of it, but it has not been independently confirmed, So they put that caveat there so that if there's a problem with that, the people will say, we kind of hold them, responsible. So the new media, like I said, the digital technologies have done a lot of service now, to the extent that the mainstream media now are kind of bending backwards, even if reluctantly, to understand that, this process is being challenged now. And they have to try and do something to be relevant, So many stories, political stories, have been broken in the US that started from the blogs, primarily, and now went into the mainstream media. And then ultimately, and the rest of the mainstream media now started, working on them and developing them. So it goes back to the point I was making, which is, it serves the mainstream media even money, it serves them resources. All they need to do is find a group of kids, from these ethnic communities, who, over time, you build up a relationship with them. Give them the basic tools they need. They don't have to call into the assignment to fight. Just let them use their news intuition and kind of try to do stories. They may not, all their stories wouldn't be published, but some of them would, and you'll be surprised at the variety and the materials and the resourcefulness, that kind of stuff that have to come in there. And you can end up paying them per story, whatever story that is they used, You end up even paying them probably 10% of, or even 5% of the monthly salary of your regular reporter. But that way they're engaged, they can tell their own stories from their own perspective too.